Stephanie said, sir?
I would just say, first off, that was so sweet, Sarah. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was very nice of you. To Sister Stephanie, thanks for coming up here. Look, I think I want to make this clear. I am not suggesting that no Republican has participated in this extreme rhetoric by any means. What I was simply trying to get across, and I think that this would be common sense, is I would place a different level of seriousness on a meme versus a current president saying that his political opponent threatens the very soul of this nation. Like, I think those are two different levels of of combat, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I will say that I do think that, and this is not to place all the blame on Joe Biden, because I do think, as someone said, Maxine Waters encouraging her supporters to harass Trump supporters. You have Joy Reid from MSNBC saying she would vote for Joe Biden in a coma over Hitler in the White House. Like, that stuff to me is insane, and it's
But
been
you
going
haven't, I'm
on.
sorry, John, I don't mean to interrupt, but like,
Yeah.
remember in 2016, I mean, Trump suggested.
Oh, she broke out for me. Is it just me?
Miss Stephanie, your mic went out for us. Stephanie?
Uh-oh. I lost her.
I think we lost her
Sorry,
too. Are you there, Steph?
I'm here. Can you
Okay,
guys hear
yep,
me?
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So do you
You
see what
broke
I'm
out at
saying?
2016.
Right? I mean, Trump, the rhetoric is on both sides. We can't, and that's where I feel, I just wish everyone would stop blaming one or the other side. We both have to stop. There's far more clear rhetoric from Donald Trump that we have all witnessed, and you and Javon, there's no way you haven't heard it. And
Well, Steph,
and
can I
again,
ask you a question when you get
yeah,
a chance?
sure.
Would you argue that the majority of the media is left leaning or left biased?
No, see, I see it completely differently than you. I
Well,
do.
I'm just saying, just generally speaking, I mean, would you at least concede that the majority of the media is left leaning or just has a left leaning bias? Not saying they're like all Joe Biden supporters, but for the most part, the
No,
mainstream media is left leaning.
I do not.
You don't believe that?
I mean, if you really seriously, I mean, I don't know. Look, I spend a lot of time watching the news run. Again, we're going to differ. You and I are just going to differ on
Well, no,
how we see
I
things.
think I'm just trying to explore your mind, because I guess the way I approach it is, I'm 26, right? And what I'm getting at is, since I was, 18, 17, was 2016 was my first election, put it like that. And that's when I really started paying attention. And, for up until I started really listening, I was told by everybody that if you're black, you vote for Hillary Clinton. She is the pro black candidate. That is the woman to go for. She is, if you don't vote for her, you hate black people, you're an Uncle Tom, you're a coon. And this is not just from online, because I wasn't even active on Twitter back then. This was from the media. And then, and that's just not cable news, but written news, because I actually read more of my news than I ever watch it. And so what I'm getting at is, not only are elected officials kind of in this scenario, in this equation, but when they have allies online and in the media to kind of echo those messages, I would argue that because an overwhelming amount of social media platforms and media were extremely left leaning or even just slightly center left, whatever have you, that message that Trump is the a threat to the soul of this nation, that he is Hitler, that he is going to put black people back in chains. This is something that black people were told repeatedly in 2016. Our rights are going away. That message was able to be echoed and amplified on a level not comparable to conservative media. That apparatus was relatively, I mean, it was diminished. I mean, we've gotten more networks now, whether it be the OANs of the world or the Newsmax, but in comparison, I mean, let's be honest here. USA Today is the largest circulated newspaper, and everyone, including non-biased sources, will tell you it's a left-leaning publication. So what I'm getting at is, the messages from the left have been amplified because they have allies not only in the in media, but in entertainment. So there's like a three-pronged attack going on that I would say has really been able to make sure their message gets cemented into the minds of Americans in a way that conservative messages are really not. I mean, as a young person and as a black man, I'm telling you right now, 90%, 80 to 90% of my community will look at me and say, "You're a fucking idiot for being a conservative," not because they understand conservative policies, but because they're fed this from a media apparatus that has given them this for 60 years. So that's where I approach the issue. And I'm a Georgetown grad, so I went to one of these elite schools, and I'm telling you, I was that black Republican on campus. Fuck you, you hate black people, you're not invited, we're not. I mean, those you get ostracized as a young person being a conservative in a lot of these spaces. And that's because of the media apparatus and the entertainment and the college professors, all of these things. I think the ability to replicate this message on the left is non-existent on the right. I
But
mean, I don't even think they're comparable.
let me say this though: the truth of the matter is, a large swath of America, I'll say even a majority of Americans, don't even are tuned out of these spaces. So what we really have are Americans who are politically active, who are politically engaged, who go to their echo chambers. You got the echo chamber on the left and the echo chamber on the right. And let me tell you why sometimes it seems, but I'm telling y'all, it's a myth that Black Americans, by and large, are somehow represented well or adherents of the left. It's because spaces on the right, Malcolm X said that the white liberal have mastered the art of pretending to be the Negro's friend. So we don't get the blatant anti-blackness on the left. Oh, it's there. Look at our communities and look at who we've been voting for the past 60 years. That's the anti-blackness. But on the right, we get the baby mama, baby daddy stereotypes. We get the y'all have failed to pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. We get the fuck your reparations. We get all that nastiness coming from the right. So when you have black people who are politically engaged, they're going to go to the side that just seems to be the less hostile, even though that side is actually even more hostile because they're supposed to be representing you with policies, but instead they just give you a symbolic representation, a few symbolic victories. They may give a black person a job like Ketanji Jackson Brown. That's supposed to somehow lift off 50, 55 million of us, do something for us, and it doesn't. So that's why sometimes we have this misconception that black Americans, by and large, are lefties, which I'm telling y'all, if anyone
Well,
actually is in black
Marcel, we're
communities,
conservatives
we
at home, but
conservative.
Democrats at the
Listen
ballot
to me.
box.
Black
It's
Americans
been this way
largely
for a long time.
largely conservative. The problem is, and I've been to MAGA rallies, I've been to American Patriot rallies, and one thing I appreciate about those spaces are two things. One, they are willing to have intellectual discourse. When I mention reparations, they don't throw tomatoes on walk out. They sit there and we have those conversations. Two, they acknowledge that the white right, white conservatives and the non-black conservatives, but even black conservatives, and they have allowed bigots to feel too comfortable saying that they represent the white right or that they represent conservatism. There has been a unfortunate conflation of being conservative and being on the right with bigotry. And that is something that the right is going to have to address. Why bigots sometimes feel more comfortable being blatant bigots on the right. Now, me, I like my bigotry blatant. I like to see who you are. Show me who you are, and I can deal with you accordingly. But that's where that misconception comes from. And that's why sometimes you go on these college campuses and you get these little boule think they're elitist blacks, they are usually the ones who are really aligned with the far left. Most of the nastiness I have faced has not come from white conservatives. It has not come from the American patriot types. The nastiness I have faced, 98% of it has come from black people who thinks that being a Democrat is more important than being black. And even black Americans. That's where most of the nasties I face. That's where most of the slander I face has come from. That's where a lot of the personal attacks I have faced has come from. Yes, I've gotten some hate messages from these wannabe white supremacist types, but a lot of the hatred I come from have come from those same types, Devon, who probably gave you hell on Georgetown campus or called you a coon. So the reason the right sometimes doesn't have the same reach among the black political spectra is because they welcome too much blatant bigotry, whereas the left is just as bigoted by neglecting us and feeding BS to us and putting on these black faces and making it seem like all we care about is aborting black babies. When I can tell you, here in the South, you talk to the average black family, abortion is not something we even think about. Usually, here, a person has a baby, the family member is going to take that baby in if the person who gave birth to that child is not able to do so. That's why you'll see an aunt sometimes raising their nieces and nephews, or you'll see sometimes a grandmother with their grandchildren until the parents get on their feet. Like this whole confiscation of guns. I'm here in the South. Black Americans are just as much gun aficionados as white Southerners. Trust you, we are. But the right is missing out on opportunities to do that. And that is the fault of the right for not engaging a lot of black voters out here. Because the truth be told, just like with white voters, over 55% of black voters aren't even active. And they're just not being, they're
So then why should they waste their time going after the black vote when it's only 15% of the population, and on top of that, about 50% aren't politically engaged? The reality is this, guys. Most Americans are fucking stupid. They don't understand how the world works. They don't have a passport. They've never left their state. They can't even name 3 countries a lot of the times. And they're idiots. And the thing is that the left is cooler nowadays. It's cooler to be liberal. It's cooler to be super edgy and woke. That's what's cool. That's the problem with the conservative side for the long time, is that it hasn't been cool. Thankfully, there's some more creators coming out there that are conservative. There's some more creators coming. Hold on, let me finish my point, bro. Let me finish my point.
But we're 33. We're like,
let me finish my point.
Million. We're 30
You're lagging right now.
People who actually vote. First of all, Asian Americans are a smaller contingent of the population. People still engage them. A huge percentage of the Hispanic population can't even vote. And you got people tripping over themselves to do things for illegal immigrants. And that includes the Republican Party. You even got people reach out to Native Americans who are like 2% of the population. So let's stop acting like 15% is such a small percentage when it's a damn lot. And 15% is actually an undercount because the census admits they undercount us by 3 or 4%. And in the South, Black Americans are usually in states like Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, 30% or more of the population. So it's not a waste of time. Just like it's not a waste of time.
It is.
What? Just not like
they're not a majority, bro. And the reality is, if the way you're going to get the black voters is by giving them handouts, you guys cry about reparations. You guys want handouts all the time. That's just the reality. Let's call a spade a fucking spade. The black community wants handouts all the time. That's what you guys want.
So, is it a handout when intern Japanese Americans or their children got reparations? Was it a handout when these Native American tribal governments get settlements that sometimes go to them in direct cash payments? Is it a handout when Holocaust survivors and their descendants get direct cash payment? Is it a handout when the downwinders get paid their reparations?
So let me ask you a question then, since you're a pro-reparation guy. Let me ask you a question. Number one, how much money... Hold on. Yo, nobody can hear you, bro. Your internet sucks. Nobody can hear you. Your shit is lagging bad. Okay? Fix your fucking dial-up internet that you got. Your AOL. You know, you're fucking... I just got online. Let me finish my point here, okay? Because you reparation guys always want handouts, and it's fucking ridiculous to me because here's my question. If you're going to go ahead and say, I want reparations, like all these other fucking crybabies, let me ask you this. Number one, who's going to pay for it? Number two, how do we identify who deserves it and who's going to get it? Number three, how are we going to be able to trace back lineage to identify you as a foundationally Black American? How far back are we going to go? Like, none of this stuff actually makes sense. And this is the problem when you want handouts. Who's going to pay for it and how are you going to actually implement it?
I have answered those questions. So first of all, the payments will come from where it's always come from, the federal government, like it's
the middle class. The middle class, because you're paying for it. The middle class is going to pay for it.
Answering your question. I'm answering your question. Number two, how do they identify who the foundational Black American? Before I even answer that, let's talk about handouts. You got a handout when your family was able to come here from war-torn, poverty-stricken Sudan. So let's not talk about handouts when I'm speaking with a living, walking, talking handout right now. Number three, the government can identify who's a foundational Black American. Excuse me, you are talking to a man right now whose great-grandmother was raised by someone who was formerly enslaved. My great-grandmother died in 2015 at 101. That's how recent slavery was. Jim Crow and redlining, those things didn't enter to the 1970s. So you're easily able to identify who is a Black American and who's a Black immigrant. The federal government knows who comes here.
And the Black immigrants come here and do a lot better than the FBAs. And you guys were born and raised here, speaking English language. You always make fucking excuses for why you're not successful. FBA's always got excuses. How come Nigerians come over here and kill it? And you guys are always crying about fucking reparations, man. It's ridiculous.
All you have is emotionalism. You cannot intellectually.
Emotionalism?
You cannot refute anything I just said, because if you're going to make that argument,
Well, number one, you're lagging.
it's
Nobody can hear you. You keep fucking lagging because you're on AOL dial-up. You got mail type internet. That's why nobody could fucking hear you. You're out there in the boonies. Your internet sucks.
look at it, turn your microphone off, and you'll be able to hear me better. Okay, thank you. The truth of the matter is,
You're the one lagging.
you have not been able to intellectually refute anything I've said, because the same arguments you're trying to make against reparations for us, you are not making against all those other groups I just named. Because I'm waiting for you to address the coal miners, the downwinders, the Native Americans, the intern Japanese, the Guamanians, the Holocaust survivors and their descendants, even though the Holocaust didn't even take place here on U.S. soil. If you're going to make those arguments against reparations for freemen, then you got to make those arguments those people. And in the case of those people, it's not the ones who were necessarily done wrong, the people who were actually alive at that time. It's sometimes going to their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So if you're going to call it handout, then you got to talk about the GI Bill. My great-grandfather is a World War
Serving your country and being black is not the same thing, bro. What the fuck? Are you serious?
My great-grandfather is a World War II veteran. He
deserves the reparations, not you, bro. Then he deserves it, not you. That's the fucking difference. Like, why are you trying to get handouts on your granddaddy? That's ridiculous.
Please stop crying.
That's ridiculous.
Put on your big boy pants and wipe the tears from your eyes, okay? My great-grandfather is
You're the one crying for reparations.
He is still alive. He's 100 years old. He never got.
So give him the money. Give him the money, not you.
He never got a penny from the GI Bill. That means wealth is not built in a day in America. Anyone who's honest can tell you this. Wealth is built over generations. He was denied the opportunity to pass wealth down to my grandmother, okay? While the 15 million white veterans got the GI Bill. I'm glad they got it. I'm not mad they got it. I'm just saying it was wrong for the federal government to not do it for everyone. So people who are saying that the federal government does not have to repair the wrong it did, you are sending a message to the federal government that a lot of people on the right are now saying is tyrannical. You're sending them a message that it's okay for them to do wrong and to do right by others, but not to do right by someone else. And that's a scary message to send this government. Truth be told, the New Deal, when Roosevelt did the New Deal, that was trillions of dollars invested in jobs and projects. It excluded many black Americans. My great grandmother told me she was excluded from the benefits of many New Deals. Okay. The Social Security Act, the Labor Union Act. My great grandparents, who all died in the 2000s, were all alive when those things happened, and they were all excluded from it. They were excluded from opportunities to build wealth. Again, I'm not mad that America helped and did for other groups, but it's wrong that they didn't do for my group. And for anyone to say that they don't have to repair it, you are saying to the government that they can have a double standard, that it's okay to have justice for some and not justice for all. Now, maybe that works in your native Sudan, but that's not how things should work here in America. And again, you are here on a handout. You're in a country.
Okay, I'm here on a handout. Yep. So explain this to me then. Okay, I'm here on a handout, right? I'm here on a handout, but for some odd reason, my parents came here, didn't speak the language, were able to make them something of themselves, buy a fucking house, earn $100K per year, and they never asked for a cent. But you're over here, born and raised here, American passport, English is your first language, you got free education, yet you're crying and complaining about the very system that put you in the position where you're at right now. That's what I'm trying to say. You guys aren't appreciative for shit. You just want to cry for reparations and handouts. That's the problem.
Visa, and they got it. And let me tell you,
your granddaddy deserved the money, not you, motherfucker. That's the difference.
Education.
I got a show to do. So I'm gonna leave. You're fucking nobody. Nobody cares what you got to say. Get the fuck out of here, man. You fucking FBAs are ass clowns.
Paid for my education, and they paid for yours. So you are the one getting the free handout. You came here on the infrastructure that was built in large part, not say only, by my people. So Myron, you are a living, breathing, walking, talking handout. Your family only was able to exist here because of handouts. And that's why I get so offended with people like you and even Vivek come here and say that certain Americans should not be able to vote unless they pass a test because his parents had to pass immigration tests. Excuse me, Vivek, your parents chose to come here. And he's going to say that people should not be able to vote because they got to do what his parents did. Then I can say to him that he should not be allowed to come to America unless he has done what my parents and grandparents had to do, fight in wars, could build this country's infrastructure. So don't you dare come here and talk about what we should be grateful for when you should be grateful for us. Because if it wasn't for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Myron, your family would not have been allowed to come here. So be grateful, be thankful, and shut up.
I'm gonna go to Joa. Joa, you've been pretty vocal on some of the things that have been discussed here. What are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, look, I've always said there's been a problem of access to capital for the Black community, right? I think when you start, and that should be fixed, and that was the problem with the GI Bill as well. Like, although America did try to do this thing to help out people that were veterans, there was still a lot of discriminatory practices with banks, right? And even real estate agents, where they didn't give them access to capital, right? So there is an access to capital issue for them, and there still is an access to capital issue. If I go get a loan and Marcel goes to get a loan, and we have an equal education, my loan will probably be approved and his might not be approved, and that still happens today, right? So that is a problem. But the reparation issue, it is extremely complicated. If anything, you would have to trace back your family lineage, and each family gets X amount. And then if you divide it through that, like, I've actually done the math, and it comes out to be like $12,000 or something like that if you just use the numbers. And that's if you have no mix in your family's background whatsoever. It's like I know they keep pushing for this, but it doesn't make sense. Like, if you want to fix your community, you need access to capital. That's where the focus should be. Is if a Black person wants to open up a business, they should have the same rights as a white person to get a loan, if everything else is the same. And
So are
that's
you
what it should be.
saying
That's what should be fixed.
are you saying that's not happening now?
It doesn't happen now. It's obviously just go look.
Yeah, I think you
Access to
probably need
capital
to
for
do
Black people
some
versus white
research.
people.
Probably need
And
to
you'll
do some
see.
research there.
You know,
Yeah.
Joa, just a moment. I know that this is a useful conversation, but I think we really want to stick to the topic at hand. JD Vance is Trump's vice president.